Good morning, everyone. This is Lori Del with the Nashville Networking Business Luncheons. We do these every single week all over Middle Tennessee and every Tuesday online right here on Zoom. So if you're joining us for the first time, or if you haven't seen us, if you're watching us online and haven't seen us before, it's NashvilleNetworkingBusinessLuncheon.com. We also have a group on Facebook as well as a group on LinkedIn if you want to join us. We're every single Tuesday on Zoom and then 5 times in person all over Middle Tennessee. So if you'd like to join us, we have a 10-minute speaker who talks to us about different tips, tricks, ideas, things that can help us both in our personal as well as our business life to help get us to that next level. After that, we go around the room and everyone will have 1 minute to give us your name, what you do for a living, and how we can better refer other people to you. After that, we go around the room and exchange business cards. So here on Zoom, we click the chat at the bottom and that opens up your chat on the right-hand side. And you can post your virtual business card. In person, of course, we just pass them around. And then we have some networking, open networking before and after the meeting. So we're gonna go ahead and introduce our speaker today is Mr. Blaine Little. Please give him your attention.
Thank you for that introduction, Lori. And it is really good to see everybody here. It's good to be out inside. And that's kind of the what we're faced with today. Is kind of the paradigm, the new norm, if you will. And Zoom calls, conference calls, they're not going to go away. John, if I were to ask you for a stock tip, you might tell me don't buy stock in airlines because there's not going to be as many flights taken by business people in the coming future because we've gotten used to this. And it's a good thing, but how do we really make the most out of it? And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about something that's in the last section of my last book that's going to hit September 29th, Managerial Mistakes, Missteps, and Misunderstandings. I'm going to be talking about remote managing. How do you manage a team that's remotely away? Now, it's not just management. It also goes to networking as well. So if you're in sales, if you have a business partner, these are some tips that are going to help you. All right, I'll pull this up if everybody sees the PowerPoint, and I think you may. And I'm going to go for the slideshow. All right, so this is entitled Walking on the Moon. Now, why in the world would I call this Walking on the Moon? When it comes to management, you may have a manager that's just 20, 30 feet down the hall, but if all they do is stay inside their office the entire time and they don't get out and they don't mingle with their people, they might as well be walking on the moon. They might as well be just 250,000 miles away. So that's why I've entitled this Walking on the Moon. And I'm going to talk about the importance of proximity plus something else. And how do we handle that in this age of COVID? Well, there's something called MBTI. Computers, and he actually observed Hewlett Packard back decades ago, and he noticed that Hewlett and Packard, the founders of the company, would get more of a better feel of how the health of the company simply by wandering around. So they would go from building to building, floor to floor, and just ask people, how you doing? What are you working on? And many times they were able to kind of connect some of the dots because of not a new concept, even though that book was written back in 1982, In Search of Excellence. There was another book that was written 500 years ago. It's entitled The Prince. And it was written by Niccolo Machiavelli in 1513. And he was an advisor to several different factions. But if you've ever watched the TV show Medici, he was, during that time, in Florence, Italy. And he advised some of those people. He advised business people. He advised royalty. And he advised the clergy. Fraud. He's promoting intimidation tactics, even violence. And I'm not going to disagree with any of that. There is a healthy dose of that. But hey, this was 500 years ago. So in the backdrop of the politics back then, that's some of the tyranny and tactics that were utilized. But one thing that he really got right was this idea, and I'm paraphrasing, no prince can rule a kingdom from a foreign land. You have to be there. If you're a monarch, your subjects, your people have to see you physically. And he remarked on how important that was, and how it really begins a chain reaction of a power vacuum if people don't see the prince. Well, this goes to a word, propinquity. I didn't make that up, although it's actually not in most dictionaries. Propinquity, a little different from proximity, it is the relationship that one has with something or someone nearby. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, they say, to an extent, but absence may also make the heart grow more siloed, alone, feelings of abandonment. And so propinquity is not just being there, but it's actually engaging with people and how do you affect one another. So we're in this situation right now to where I'm with you virtually, even though I'm not physically there with you. Under COVID-19, there's many things that prevent propinquity. We have the stay inside orders. We have to wear masks, so we don't necessarily get to, when we do see one another, we don't get to see full facial expressions. Businesses are closed, so we may not be able to go to our favorite hangout. And of course, social distancing. So there's 4 different things that I really wrote that was good for managers managing a remote team, but they really do apply to networking as well. So it's the 4 C's of remote management, or you can say the 4 C's of remote engagement. Number 1 is commitment. Commitment. Commit to the experience that at least for the next 2 to 12 months, this is how many of us are going to be meeting. And rather than to come into a conference call with, being a sourpuss and kind of doom and gloom, and I'm zoomed out, I'm tired of this, which we all kind of are, but be committed to it and say, what can I do to make this experience better? What can I do within myself? What kind of an attitude can I bring still to share with others? Clarity. Has the work changed? Are there extra steps in the process? So if you have administrative people who are now working at their home, like I would probably guess maybe about half across America actually do work from home if they're in more administrative or office workers. How has things changed? The people working at home need to understand that. So is there going to be an extra step or a check in the process, or are there going to be fewer? We're just simply trusting that the employee at home is going to take care of things before they send forward the report or report the sale. Connection. This goes back to propinquity. Even though we're not physically there, we can still make a connection with human beings. And I'm reminded of when I was just a little kid, well, a teenager. And if I didn't show up for church one day, one week. I would maybe follow the next week or a couple weeks later, come in, and the pastor would be, Blaine, we miss you when you're away. And I would say, Pastor, I missed you too. That's not what he wanted to know. He wanted to know where I was and what I was doing. But there is kind of, there's that ability to remind people we are thinking about them. We can still pick up the phone and give a one-to-one telephone call and say, hey, I know a lot of people are kind of bummed out because of COVID right now. Just wanted to touch base with you and see how you're doing. And if you're in management, you really do need to do that, almost that interpersonal relationship connection, because we're human beings. We need that. And to extend a hand and say, I'm concerned about you, does not eliminate your professionalism as a manager or as a boss or as an owner. And then, of course, communication. Communication is really big. And we have to remind ourselves, true communication is a dialogue. It's two-way. If it's only one direction, that's a monologue. And you better be funny, Johnny Carson. Communication, true communication really is both ways. And so we need to stop and just make sure, ask for feedback, because we're talking to a camera, a little piece of electronics. We tend to forget that, yeah, there's somebody on the other side of that. What questions do you have? Does that make sense? Should I put that another way? And ask for that feedback. Well, the last thing I'm going to leave you with, probably before I do ask for a little bit of feedback, is, I say this is kind of the new normal. Conference calls are not going away, but have faith, because we will return. We will get back into in-person network meetings. And I'm so glad that this organization is really kind of taking the lead on that, the Nashville Networking Business Luncheon. Even when there's some other organizations I know that are still just not meeting, but people are ready to get out and engage again. But conference calling isn't going away. Let's get used to it. Let's commit to it. But we will be back in person with some people soon. So let me ask, what questions do you have, if anything, or any comments that you would like to make on what I've discussed? Your observations of propinquity, anything? Hearing none, I'm going to just remind you again that I detail this pretty deep in my new book. It's coming out on Amazon, paperback and electronically, on the 29th. Thank you so much.
Unmute.
How do I get back out of this? Oops, stop share.